Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. Welcome, everybody, to the show, Blue Collar Mystics. Yeah, we're digging around, we're rooting in there. We're going to check and see how much ketamine's in this vehicle here and make sure we're not a quart low. I have an awesome guest. The great James Thomas, a.k.a. Admiral Hits, is joining us once again. A good friend of the show and co-creator of the show and creator of a pretty amazing things. I want to just... throw out a couple of things just before we get started and just let people know I did just create a summary for the reality transurfing book. You can get that on my website for now, and it will be available in some other places as well. And I'll let people know when that is available. Making some more videos about that. I've had probably the most demand to make that kind of content. And frankly, it's my favorite book. I mean, it makes the most sense. I know that maybe we can talk a little bit about it, James, because when we first met, I was telling you about it and you went out on a limb and bought it. I mean, the book is not cheap, the book is like $50 and, it's a lot to read. So we can maybe talk a little bit about that, but that summary is available. And we're going to be talking a little bit about alchemy, vibrational alchemy, and some of the cool discoveries that James has come out with. And I mean, you're a man of many talents, and you and I are always learning, and we've had and been able to foster a really good relationship together, helping each other. And it means a lot. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, man. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Owen.
Oh yeah, dude. Always. You there? Oh boy. Did we freeze? Did we freeze already?
Appreciate having me.
So I know that he's up in Michigan. There has been a bit of a snowstorm. Maybe we're having an issue with maybe this is StreamYard again. I don't know. But I think you're frozen, James, at least for the moment. We got you. There we go. Hey, we got you.
So were you still broadcasting? It's my connection or yours?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't know. I talked for a minute. I don't know, but I can hear you now. So I think we're good. Let us know in the chat, fam, if you can, if we're coming through clearly. But I can hear you now. I can see your movements as well. So
yeah, good. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So what was the question? Where were we?
Well, it is a good question. Well, I was just saying, like you and I, we've been able to spend some time together, be able to really develop a friendship and collaborate on some stuff. And we've talked here about your spaceship, and the things you've done with the gongs, and it's fascinating. And you've taken that work and really developed it more and more and more. I think we talk a little bit about, or started to mention a little bit about reality transurfing, because whenever I sent you that book, you are one of the most, I don't want to say skeptical, because that's not really true. I mean, you are skeptical, but you're one of the most, like, I don't know, I would say just centered people that I don't think anybody could really get one over on you. Okay. Maybe it's partly because you've been in the festival world for so long, and there's so many people who are selling, fake drugs and all kinds of different things. And you kind of have a way to just sense out bullshit, basically. And so I think you kind of had to take a little bit of a risk by reading that book, but
Hey, well, it's funny if they waited to the last chapter to get into the higher self kind of religious aspect of the book. And if it would have been in the first chapter, I probably wouldn't have dived in. But it's funny, when I started that book, I was in a really good spot, but I hadn't had my awakening yet. I hadn't had the experience that really jarred me open. And then when I finished the second half of it after I had this amazing spiritual experience, and as I got to the end of the book, and I was like, oh yeah, of course. But I wouldn't have probably been that way at the beginning. And so, yeah, I mean, that book definitely caught me at one of the most powerful changes in my life. And it was as true before the change and even truer after the change, in my opinion. And again, it's like transurfing is really, it's somebody's perspective of, tapping into all the energy that all religions are tapping into, and any of the vibrational and energetic things that anybody could create for any system they want. And so, I was actually at the second half of that book, I started reading the Bhagavad Gita at the same time. And it was amazing to me how many parallels there were in both books. But, obviously Vadim can't be like, hey, I'm already writing a historical, like ancient text. And it's the same thing with Tony Robbins is doing all this type of same stuff. They're just all putting their own labels and their own methodologies and systems on this available energy that we all can tap into. And so as I'm reading through the Bhagavad Gita and transurfing at the same time, I'm realizing, oh yeah, these are all just hermetic laws, and Bhagavad Gita is operating more from an egoic and spiritual sense, whereas Vadim's operating from a very mechanical, almost computerized, analytical way of looking at all these things. But ultimately, they're tapping into the same observations, and they're just expressed a little bit differently. And so, it was really amazing once I got to a point where I was reading both those books at the same time. I'm like, oh my God, they're just saying the same thing. But such a far different perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of been my experience too with almost all the spiritual books, and that one was the one that kind of tied the room together. I didn't read the Bhagavad Gita until after that, but man, that's a great one too. Fantastic. But yeah, I think all the books are kind of saying the same thing, right? Just in different words, and so from a different perspective. And when I talked to you, when I was telling you about it, I knew for sure, well, I was hopeful that you would appreciate it. And then I remember after, or even during, you're like, I haven't found anything in here yet I can argue with.
No, it was very powerful. When you introduced me to the book, I was like, yeah, sure, 900 pages. I'll get right on that. And all $50. And then you're like, well, here, listen to my audiobook. And as I listened to the first 5 chapters or so, I realized, I'm like, wow, this is some good stuff. I need this book in my hand. I'm not a read to type of fella, and I'm certainly not a PDF kind of guy. I need a book in my hand to connect with it. And at that point, by the time I got to the 5th chapter of your audio retake on it, I was like, no, I need this book in my hand. I got to be able to write stuff down. I got to be able to connect to a glossary, and move freely through the material. But yeah, it's definitely very powerful read, and to this day, I still include a lot of the transurfing glossary in my everyday experience.
Yeah, I had to reread it again. I try to read it every year, and it took me all year last year to read it. And when I read it at the end of last year, I was like, God, man, this isn't even a spiritual book. It makes more sense every time. And as I was reading it, I was like, man, so many people have asked me about this time and time again. And I know a lot of people aren't just going to jump in. Like you said, who's going to dive in to a 900-page book, And I guess it kind of makes sense. If you can test it out a little bit, dip your toe, maybe check it out. So I don't know. I thought a summary might be helpful. And honestly, like I listen to a lot of book summaries myself, just on like Scribd or Everand or whatever, because it's like, oh, well, I just want to get the basic ideas. Some of those summaries, though, are just absolute trash. It'll just be like, in the first chapter, the author talks about how to build a website. He tells you all the things you're going to need for your website, including an email list and, a hosting platform. It's like, you're just walking around all the things that you're supposed to be, helping
summarizing.
Shortcut, like what I'm saying. You're just describing what they said. That's not the summary, dude. It's like did a 7th grade, student write this summary? What the hell? It was due in their class. But yeah, like no, whenever I've shared it, especially like someone like yourself or Abby, which she discovered, I think, independent of me, and then we just started talking about it a few years later. But it always, I don't know, it just reinforces it from my perspective too, because it's just like, oh well, somebody else gets it too. I don't feel so alone, or maybe alone is not the right word, but just like when you're
isolated.
Isolated is the word.
It's isolated. It's like these techniques and these observations are very real, but they are kind of abstract. And as you meet every adult, the secret to being an adult is everybody acts like they know what the fuck is going on, but none of them really, they're just still figuring it out, right? And that's like you're a little kid and you think your parents have figured it out, and they haven't fucking figured shit out. And so it's a lot of people are just running around with their abstract idea of linear reality, and and the ideas presented in that book really kind of pull everything apart into a very methodical approach. That it's a little abstract for someone who just thinks cause and effect. I do this happens, kind of thing. And but the reality is we're all sharing a space, but we don't live the same realities, and it's our model that creates that. And when you really start looking into it, especially through the transurfing lens, that model is the lenses, or what do they call them?
The
slides.
Yeah.
Right. And so your slide, I mean, ultimately, any of the stuff that we have is a distortion on reality, right? And it's just like any perspective that we take is just personally attributed to us through our filter and our model and our map. And then it isn't even reality. It's our intellectualizing of the models of that reality, and which are all vibrations, right? And so we're all experiencing our version of the map simultaneously in a space that we share, and we all think that we're sharing the same reality. And it's like, no, it's not true at all. There's so many, there's global things that tie us all in, sight and sound and taste and hearing, but each of us have a certain degree of all of those things that limit our understanding of the model. And then you get into language and perceptions and geography and culture. That's the next level of that model. And then you have your likes, your dislikes, your I don't cares, your all of your personal preferences that now filter in. So you got this global, local, personal giant map, and the map's not the territory, right? And so we're always all trying to intellectualize from this space. It's like, you could have $10 million, but if you don't have access to food, you can't eat that fucking money, right? And so, the idea that we're all sharing the same reality is kind of an abstract idea. It's not correct. We're sharing the same space. No matter what I like or dislike or I'm sad over, there's a tree outside that's alive. and it don't give a damn about how I view any of it and how my experience is shaped through the distortions. And so, that's, I try to like think about plants and trees and stuff and animals all the time. They do not care about any of the distortions that I lay on. And when you can really boil it down to that level, and really like, okay, you can accept it. What the way you see the world isn't really the world; it's just your model of it. And how do you harness that energy and harness that reality, and to work for you? And that's what the slides thing in transurfing is a very valuable tool to sculpt that awareness and kind of get what you want out of it.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, it's just like really tied the room together for me. I guess I say that a lot, like often, because it really is like this individualistic sort of spirituality, because he's talking about everything has its own goal. You have your own goal, and then yes, obviously we have these slides, these distortions. We're here, like you said, the map is not the territory, but each of us has the map. We're sharing the territory, kind of bumping into each other,
and our map creates that importance, right? Is to some degree, so you have this very benign world that we're sharing. There should be no importance attached to any of it. The rock and the tree and the animal aren't like attaching any of that importance to their experience, right? And so, our model creates all this importance, creates these distortions. Whether it doesn't even matter if they're rosy or not. It's great if you still like the distortion and feel good in the distortion, but that doesn't make the distortion any more real or any more right. And so then transurfing really takes the right and wrong and this idea and brings it just to a very minimalized level of taking responsibility for the vibrational output that you're putting into the world, right? And that's the thing, is every thought is a vibration, and every vibration you're transmitting, right? And so you're literally, and he says it differently in the book, but ultimately every choice we are making is shaping that reality, that map, right? And you're constantly broadcasting from your base frequency this compilation of your experience, and that you're creating it. If you're happy, you're happy, and that's as right as not being happy. Like, the universe doesn't care; it's completely indifferent. You want to create misery in your life? Well, here you go. It's weird that you want to do that, but I'm more than happy to deliver, right? And so it's like, and that's where a lot of we're not aware of the generational perspective that keeps on getting brought down to each and taught because people don't have a clear idea of what their path really looks like, and they think that they're teaching their children what they know, but they're just teaching them their perspective, right? It's like that's one of the awesome things about a psychedelic experience, that one of the most powerful assets or experiences you can get out of that is you start to realize that everything you know is just taught. It's not real. It's only as real as you've allowed it to be, and everything you know was taught to you, and it's okay if it was wrong or feels right. But you have to understand that that is just something that was part of your program.
Yeah, man, I love that. Yeah, I was just revisiting it, and he says that the tabula rasa or blank slate sort of philosophy, that is, he says, he claims that is true of the mind. But for you, and you understood this so intuitively, right? But that your heart is not a tabula rasa. Your heart comes into the world like ready to throw down. It's like, I came in here to do some shit, and here's what I'm going to do. And so that's kind of what you have done, with your own contraption, your art project, this thing that you've put together, and you understand the vibrational part of it, I think, so much more better than me. Maybe I'm just like a little bit more visual, or I don't know. Maybe you see the music, man. I don't know. but you do such a good job with the sort of vibrational stuff. You talk a little bit about that and how you interpret and understand vibration.
Ooh, well, I can talk about how it happens in I mean, the world, everything that we come into contact is a vibration. It's just energy connects to a slow vibration, and everything's got a frequency, and we're interacting with it. And in fact, everything that we see and hear is just frequencies that our meat brain computer, meat sack is processing, right? So we're not like really seeing the screen right now. We're seeing all the light that reflects as that screen. And that's all, all vibration. I mean, you can take the vibratory nature of a spectrum of light and literally reduce it to a color and a sound. When you get it to auditory frequencies and things like that, I don't know the actual technical terms from going to light to sound, but they're on the same spectrum. It's the same vibration. It doesn't change. It's just if you oscillate something, it just keeps on. If the faster you go, it's eventually going to turn to light, and the slower it becomes matter, right? And so we hear in a spectrum, I think it's 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. But when you start getting into those sub spectrums below our hearing, that's when things are solid, right? It's the solid matter that we experience, or the illusion of the solid matter we experience, right? Because we not like, if you get into physics and stuff, we don't actually come into contact and touch any of these things either, right? It's kind of so we're almost back to Datum's perspective of this computerized world that we're interacting with, and having a system to interact and transmit and receive all this data.
Yeah, I like that. I was at this like hippie conference thing in LA a couple of years ago, and I went to this late night sort of thing, and there's a guy who's pretty big now, Billy Carlson. There was a lot of people on this panel, but I remember somebody saying on the panel, "All mass is frozen light," is basically what they said, and that kind of stuck with me for a long time. But yeah, like you're saying, we get into the physics of it, and it just gets so confusing and intense and complicated that it's like, what are we, is like a thought loop that just never ends. Honey has a question. She says, next question, what would be the biggest identity shift James has had with sound healing? What I am statement or statements changed?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I think, before I had my first powerful experience in the sound healing, I didn't know exactly how the spaceship worked. And then after I had this amazing healing experience, all during this transurfing stuff, all during the pandemic, I really kind of like dialed in. The biggest thing I can say is hitting your resonant frequency and just shutting down your mind. Because we all have been tricked into not believing or not understanding that how magical and how powerful we are. They're like, hey, you just do this, and we're just going to go through life, and you got to get a job, and you got to go to school, and you got to learn all these things outside of you. Type of energy and the more that we went through school, we got indoctrinated, and it like took away our curiosity, and like, oh, I'm just going to survive and earn money. Type of fucking behavior that it elicited in us to the survival state. And so I think what I learned most about through the sound healing component is it shuts down your mind enough to really tap into what your heart wants. And if you can shut your mind down and tap into your higher self and tap into your soul, which is really what your heart's connected to, because your mind's just there to like keep you alive, keep your meat sack alive. Hey, there's a tiger. Don't fall in this hole. We're hungry. It's going to get dark soon. We got to get home. It's just there to like guide this experience, right? But we take it so serious. And so I think, when hitting, spending time in these sound fields, it can really bring your resonant frequency to a spot that feels like home, feels like love from the universe. Shuts your mind down and really allows your heart to speak to what it wants, and it allows you to tap into your magic, because ultimately, and I say this a lot, your imagination is your magic, your emotion is the power behind it, and your focus is where that magic happens. And if you're letting all the ideas of everybody else's fears and their idea of cause and effect, and the ideas of impossibility, you can't fly, you can't fly, airplanes aren't real, you can't go to the moon, you can't do this, you can't do that. If you let the outside world tell you what you can't do, your imagination is now stifled, and you're imagining their version and their model, right? And so when it doesn't matter that you're feeling uncomfortable sensations. What matters is okay, you're sad, okay, you're angry, okay, you're frustrated. Taking that energy and replacing your imagination with the outcomes that you want, and creating outside, like what you came here to do, which is create. And if you're focused with somebody else's model, like the news telling you that you're going to kill your grandma because you're not wearing a mask, and you get all bent up emotionally over that, now you're thinking about it, now you're like literally destroying yourself with your own magic at that point, because now you're imagining something that isn't true. And when you're putting emotion behind it, and the focus is on you or someone you love. And so the ultimate, all the great thinkers through time, they didn't allow anybody to tell them what their reality was. They just created with their imagination, right? And I think it's easy to like get sad or angry and think about what we don't want, and we don't realize that controlling our mind is the greatest part of our experience. It's part of our choice. It's part of the heart-mind connection that creates our reality in the moment. And when you can get really in touch with yourself, your higher self, your soul, your heart, whatever label you want to put on it, source, and you get the mind out of the way, like that's where all the magic really happens. And so then, that's the essence of what I'm doing, is really with that is I'm not fixing you. You're fixing yourself with your own magic in there, because you're not caught up in the everyday struggle of survival that you've been taught to experience.
Yeah, that's really good.
I don't know. Did I answer the question right,
I
honey?
think I think she's I think so. I think she said a couple of different things here. That's beautiful. Thank you. Gonna save this to a playlist. Maybe I should cut that clip out. My friend Ham Cow says, "Have you ever tried a Rife machine? Have you ever tried
you
one
know,
of
I,
those?"
I have a Rife machine, and when I first got into sound healing, uh, the Rife machine fascinated me, but I've never played with one long enough to, or had a specific thing that I was trying to address when I was playing with it to see any real effects. But honestly, uh, Rife was onto something miraculous in his work, and and still to this day, the Rife machine ain't passed for humans, but it's FDA approved for animals. So it isn't like the FDA doesn't know the power of the Rife machine. They
That's funny
fucking
as hell.
know. They fucking know. And so the Rife machine is quite an amazing. It really works in that frequency of understanding what it is you're trying to work with, and then providing a frequency that shatters those negative aspects. So, for instance, cancer is, you can find the resonant frequency that shatters that cancer cell, and like literally destroys it and decimates it. Um, and it's like a lot like an opera singer just shattering a glass. It hits a mark, it hits a certain point, and now it's now decayed this particular item because it met the criteria to do so. And so I really do feel like the Rife machine has amazing potential, and there's also new technologies that far exceed the Rife machine. Um, there's this fellow that has something called his company called iPyramids, and it's really using this. God, I wish I knew the terms off the top of my head. It's using this toroidal woven thing to create a magnetic circular motion, right? And so but like you can pipe in different frequencies to this thing that's emitting, like, you know, some of the bigger ones emit this frequency at like 2,500 square feet, like your whole house. And it's crazy. It's like when you go onto this guy's website and check his testimonies, it's like, it's really, it's like some of the testimonies that I get for what I do. It's just, you know, there's no explanation why somebody should feel the way they do from, you know, a little bit of energy running through this wire, but it does. And it's something, I mean, it's something that I've wanted to integrate into the sound chamber, is having these magnetic resonations, and being able to, you can connect it right up to your phone and go through an app and like decide all the frequencies and things that you want to try to work with. So I mean, I feel like that's kind of the technology today has built on some of Rife's work, and you know, there's lots of things out there, I think, that are really diving into those vibratory concepts.
Right on. John asks, will we see a day where we gather as a community in sacred sanctuaries of sound like we used to?
I mean,
this guy's trying to make it happen. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah.
if anybody's leading the charge, it's you.
I mean, one of my main visions is to have a center of pyramids all over North America and the world, where we could be doing these sound ceremonies and stuff. And you know, and everybody that's doing the work is doing the work. You know, I don't think I hold a monopoly on it or anything like that. I think, you know, a lot of people are learning how to learning how powerful they are, and learning, you know, the most important thing is to like get out of your head and really get into your resonant frequency, whatever that looks like. And so, you know, I think in a lot of ways, maybe in 100 years or 200 years, sound will be the only medicine. You know, so, you know, will I be alive for that day? I'm not sure, but I mean, there's a lot of promising treatments now. You know, they used to have to like do some really painful things for like kidney stones, and now they use vibration to break them up inside of you. And you know, like, I think there's a lot to be said about just destroying the cells that are bringing you to disease, and getting ultimately, a cell's behavior is completely dependent upon its environment. So changing that environment changes the outcome on a cellular level. So, you know, it's like, if we can do that for us, figure out that out. Yeah, I mean, it'd be really beautiful if we could all get a place, just show up at your sound temple and you know, show up on Sunday, have your word with your higher self and spirit, and go back to creating what you're supposed to be doing the rest of the time. Yeah, I would love to see a more unified worldview of how sound, you know, and, you know, I think a lot of that's also been co-opted by the music industry, you know, the commercial music industry, of telling, it's like you hear a song that makes you cry, makes you happy, right? But how often do you give yourself the credit for making you happy or sad listening to that song? It ain't the song. You're responding to that vibration, and now you're putting that output out, right? And so, and I think people resonate to music in a lot of ways for all those feelings and those vibrations, but they don't give themselves as much credit through that process as they should, that they now outsource to the artist or the interface or whatever. But ultimately, you make yourself feel that way. You're responsible for it, and that vibration is just nurturing the ability to do so.
Can you talk a little bit about your current explorations into vibration, number, and finding? Because I mean, so I'll just explain this in a kind of a breakneck way, but like the way that you have your spaceship built is like you go in and the whole universe is surrounding you. But what you're doing now is you're looking into other frequencies that may match other even molecular structures, let's say. And when you called me the other day, you were kind of having an epiphany and maybe a little bit of a breakthrough about this. I would love if you feel like sharing a little bit about what you've been discovering with that.
So essentially, so all the vibrations of the planets that Paiste use, which is these frequencies that all the gongs are tuned to. So, like for instance, the Earth year and Jupiter and Mercury, they're all tuned to a vibratory frequency. And so he's a Swiss mathematician. His name's Hans Cousteau. He wrote a book called The Cosmic Octave. And so he's like a music specialist, had a PhD in music and a PhD in mathematics, I think. And so Hans basically figured out, okay, this is the frequency of Earth's one rotation around the sun. So that's a year. And it's this astronomical number. And that astronomical number is then reduced to an auditory frequency that we can hear. So like, for instance, Mercury is 141.27 hertz. And so that's the reduction from this astronomical number. And I think I think it's a C sharp or it's a D. I'm not sure what the note is, but it's a C or a D, C sharp or a D, something like that. And it could actually still even be a C sharp. I don't know if it actually makes it out of that range. But so he figured out all these things. And so there was a theoretical document in that book I came across the other day. And it was the book's written in English, but the document that I found was written in German. And it was about the resonant frequency of LSD and MDMA. And what he took someone else's research and took the infrared spectrum of these drugs and brought forth a number that could be used to reduce all the way to an octave that we could hear. And so I used ChatGPT to give a translation of that German document, and then had it act as a mathematician and gave me a set of octaves for each. So I guess there's 5 infrared spectrums in the molecule. And then so each of those different parts were then reduced to, I think it's like 5, got 5 different octaves or something. So I basically produced from 40 to 4,000, the 5 notes that in each of those 5 things that would respond. And so I haven't done the same one for MDMA yet, but I thought it'd be interesting to work within those frequencies. And it's like the same way that Mercury is supposed to, you even experienced the Mercury gong at your house when Mercury represents communication, and it literally looked like you were clearing your throat chakra at that moment. You went through a long noise making phase that Mercury gong was totally initiating. And so some of these things are theoretical, and some of them are very spot on, and so the whole thing is to get creative with the hard data and see what sticks. Throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. But I've been thinking about creating a sonic jacuzzi where we'd have transducers all over a container that you would sit inside of, and then all of these transducers would then activate these different octaves and scales of these inebriatory, vibratory reducings, and at different spots, and kind of just make it kind of like you would if you were in a hot tub. Just get be sitting in some Therafluid or some mud or something, and see what these frequencies provide in a very randomized way.
Yeah, a lot of people speculate that that's what a lot of these ain't like older, Gothic churches and stuff, that they were playing with those pipe organs, healing frequencies and the healing waters, and people would go in the water and all that. I don't know. It's all conjecture. Nobody really knows about it, but there's some interesting documentaries and stuff on a deep, dark YouTube rabbit hole. If you go into Tartaria, have you heard of Tartaria?
I haven't.
It's like an alternative history theory, but like some of the stuff is pretty interesting and appealing and fun to think about at least. But like, yeah, because like a lot of those Gothic castles and like big temples and different things like that, none of them have bathrooms in it. And it's like, so do people really live there, or and they're built, in a very advanced way. A lot of them, the architecture is not easy to put together,
Yeah, no right angles. Right
Right.
angles destroy sound and traps energy, consciousness, and vibration. And so you go to those churches or those temples, and you go in, and you just have this amazing feeling because it's not this box that you've now created, you've now entered like you would. It's like, have you ever gone to your grandmother's home and like it's still the same way you remember when I was a kid, when you were a kid, and like I remember my grandmother's home when I was like 5 years old. I went 30 years later, and it felt exactly the same way, smelt the exact same way. Just the energy had been trapped there, and and we all live in these right angle boxes. And I think when you get to a temple or a church, those Freemasons that built some of those temples and churches took centuries to build. Like it took multiple Freemason master masons to be on that project, and that's actually why the churches didn't know how to build those temples. They needed the masons to do it, and that's why the masons actually got so much power, because they had the knowledge to build the thing that the church felt they needed. But it took forever. The church went through a lot of changes in a 100-year build.
No doubt. Yeah. It's pretty intriguing, man. There's a lot to all of that, and there's some interesting documentaries and stuff on the YouTube wormhole, that rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I love what you've been able to put together and how you've started to amass this stuff. Can you talk about like what you're working on and what you're thinking about doing like with this knowledge coming up?
Well, so I've been working a lot with my mentors, my shaman and financial mentors and spiritual mentors, and really putting together a 3-day intensive retreat. And it's like as you go through and create these things, you start, you have ideas, and originally wanted to start with the 7 directions, but then you add in all these components and participation and the amount of energy it takes. 7 might need 7 in a week, not a weekend. And so I've reduced it just to the 4 directions and elements. And so basically running I would say that it's a integration of therapies and concepts to really just unlock inner harmony. And again, it's like every thought is a vibration. So like really, it's like when you get into thought and when you get into ritual and you get into ceremony, ultimately all those things are just there to set your vibration, because you are the magic, you are the ritual. It's all happening within you. And so, as I say, hey, we're going to do this fire ceremony now, and this is what fire means. And we get into all these things and go through like lighting fire and burning intentions or whatever it may be. But ultimately, those are all just things to bring your mind to a particular vibration that sets the power and elemental spirits inside of you, and engages and activates them, right? And so, that's the concept, is to focus on these elemental powers. And, it's like earth, air, fire, and water are all very powerful. They're the reasons why we're here and can even have this conversation. And they're very powerful elements of, alchemy and hermeticism, and many traditions, not just those traditions. And so I'm going to do the 4 directions and 4 elements. Do guided meditations around those things, a breath work around each of them, and then a 30 minute to an hour long ceremony of performing the actual vibratory frequencies and gongs that associated with the astrological correspondences. So, for instance, fire is a correspondence would be Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries, and then each of those have a planet. Aries is Mars, Sun is the Sun is Leo, and so you're going to get into these correspondences and with these planetary frequencies which we use, and really the ultimate is like the idea behind fire is passion, it's creativity, right? And, water is emotions and intuition. Air is thinking. Earth is grounding, feeling connected, right? Connected to source, connected to yourself. And so each of these separate ceremonies are going to be really focused on hitting those elements and unlocking those components within somebody. It's like I definitely have felt very creative in some of my sessions, right? And where other ones have grounded me, and other ones have cleared emotion, right? And so it's really, again, it's the idea of these ceremonies is to really set your resonant frequency, get you thinking about the base ideas around them, and allow you to enter this space and allow you to create the experience around that and use your own magic on yourself. And it's like, again, it's like everything that was never impossible was always impossible until someone said, fuck you, I'm going to create that, and then did, right? It's like what's his name, Bill Gates, his goal in like 1982 was to have a personal computer in every household, and computers filled up entire houses at that point. Like, right, it was like you'd have to have a house for your computer if you wanted a computer in your house, right? And so he built, people were telling him it was impossible. People would tell you it's impossible to go to the moon. People tell you it's possible to fly, but it isn't the impossibility of those perspectives that made them impossible. It was people not believing in their ability to create, right? And so if any of those people who created took our word for it of the impossibilities, and it would still be impossible, right? And so impossible shit's done all the time, and it's done in spite of what you believe it to be reality to be. And so my whole engagement is really about showing you that you can create whatever you dream of, and freeing your mind up to do that, and giving yourself the space to do that yourself. I'm just holding space. It's like I can't tell you what to feel or can't tell you what to think, but we can set forth these intentions and work towards. It's like you never know. Like there's so much stuff that's hidden underneath, right? It's like you think you got it all figured out until you have this aha moment, right? And you level up again. And so inside those 4 elements are the basic things that are subconscious and our physical world kind of work with, and yeah, we're just focused on getting you in the vibratory field to open it up for yourself and explore without thinking, without holding yourself back with your thoughts or your perspective or anything, right? Just get in touch with your higher self or your soul or whatever that looks like to you in your belief structure. Because I'm definitely not trying to change anybody's beliefs. I feel like we're all here creating our own reality, and spiritualism is living through your experience, or religion is living through someone else's. So I'm here to open up the door and allow you to be creating whatever it is you want to create. If you're following me and thinking that everything I say is going to be right, or holding it to this dogmatic truth, well, I mean, that I'm no different than any other religion. And so really it's like I'm kind of just I got the gutter walls up, and I'm just keeping the discussion in this way while you're heading down this long path. And I by no means is anything I'm saying supposed to supplant what you believe to be your reality, but you should believe and understand that you are creating it and you have that power. And so, like, again, I can't even stress enough, religion's living through someone else's experience. You're talking about Buddha or Christ. Well, they had an enlightened experience and shared some teachings, but it's the people who made the religions that is trying to get you to follow their experience, to follow the way they saw the world. None of those guys were like, you need to listen to me. They were just teaching love, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so, you have to live this thing through your experience. And that's, I think, you go, bringing it back around to transurfing, that's what transurfing really hits home, is you are the one, your choice. You are the one that's making up your experience right now. And you're feeding into the, all the energies of the world and what's your vibrations and agreeing what that experience is going to be. And so, ultimately, I said the experience that I provide is a nonverbal lesson in the moment. Get rid of, it's like words. I could say a word, right? Let's say love, right? Love is a model of your idea of the vibratory frequency that you experience when you experience this thing called love. When you have this experience and you're now, right? And so now you have this vibratory feeling that makes you feel amazing, and you put this label on it. And now we're going to intellectualize and talk about love, right? That's just the model of the vibratory feeling, right? And it's the same thing with hate, and it's the same thing of sadness and all these things. And we're so used to like hanging all these labels and talking about them, but we're not like resting our laurels on the experience of them and that vibratory output, right? And so ultimately, that's what really one of my goals is to get people into that vibration, and like, again, it's like we can talk about love. Let's say if I grew up in a home that was and we talked about this in the Blueprint for Happiness. If I grew up in a home where my parents beat me and tell me they love me, and you grow up in a home that's completely supportive and they tell you they love you each night, and then we sit down to have a discussion, both of our viewpoints of that vibratory nature of love is going to be greatly askewed. And this is where the trivium comes in. We got to define our terms, right? Before we can even have a discussion. So like, you really like, there's so many rules to the language that we don't interact with appropriately to be able to critically think about the way that we just wield these words. Like they are the things. I can't eat the word food. But yeah, we talk about food, like there it is, like, oh, just gonna go eat dinner tonight. And no, it's like, that's a model where we need to be able to communicate. We need to have, we need to be able to label these things and be able to try to like connect on some level. But ultimately, I find that my best connection comes without words. And the best way for me to teach you is to put you in that vibratory field for you to teach yourself and feel your own magic. And, it's like, I could try to put on labels to this all day long. But ultimately, you just need to experience what I'm offering to understand your own epiphanies and to understand how I may or may be right in the way that you see the world. And it's like, again, it's like, I don't like to claim being right. It's just a perspective. Truth is just a perspective. It's like, I've seen a lot of that. You see a lot of arguments. Something as simple as like flat Earth, right? The truth is perspective. Down here, the fucking world is flat, but up there, it's round, right? It's like the perspective only comes from, the truth only comes from your perspective. Same thing with like sacred geometry, right? It's 2D, but then you look at it again as 3D. It doesn't change the perspective. It doesn't change the truth of the perspective that you went from this to that. Both perspectives still exist, right? And so, truth is in perspective, but it isn't the truth. It's a truth. And, finding the truth that works best for you to navigate this crazy world that we all live in and share. That's, again, it's why I really do like the transurfing model, because it gives you a very calculus way to map it all out and work through it. It's just a lot of math.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things he says in there too. As I'm reading the book again, it's like I said earlier at the beginning, I'm like, this is even a spiritual book, because one of the things he talks about is like, he's like, all these people have these different views of the world, like idealism or materialism or whatever, right? He's like, but a bunch of mathematicians don't get together and be like, well, calculus is the only math. No, it's geometry, right? And like try to fight each other because like they have different models of math, right? Like it doesn't work like that. It's a great example. And oh yeah, my friend also named James. I call him Ham Cow because his middle name's Hamilton and his last name is Cow. And so he says, speaking of transurfing, got any book recommendations? Do you have any? Because I definitely.
I mean, the one that's really sitting with me directly right now that I'm rereading again that really means a lot is The Structure of Magic.
Bandler, huh?
Yeah, it's really just, it goes back into the models. It's like it goes into, you're creating a map of your territory. The map is not the territory. And you're going through a whole process of generalizations, deletions, and denials that continuously either enhance or subtract from your map, and understanding that, it isn't like your map's not complete enough to maybe have the 10,000 solutions that are available to you. And, it's really about expanding your map. And, one of the awesome examples that he has in the book in the language portion, which I say is the local portion of your hindrances on or limitations on your map, is in English we see the 7 colors, and that's our spectrum that builds 7.5 million different variations, right? And so, but if you grew up in this tribe in Northern California, they see 3 colors, right? And so if I have an orange and a red book on the table, and you and I are in there, we speak English, our understanding is that's an orange and red book. Well, this tribe, orange, red, and yellow, or orange and yellow and brown are the same color. It's called talak. And so even though they're separate entities of difference, that the person that speaks that language only sees that one color, even though the books are changed and have a very strong difference of appearance. And so in that situation, the map of someone who speaks that native language, they only see one color. And so their model is impoverished to the basic understanding of what reality is. And so that's just a simple example of a language perspective and really limiting your reality, right? I mean, now you get into all the variables that can limit your reality, and it's just like, it's super powerful. But that's just the beginning of the book. What it really gets into is the language and how we explain ourselves and explain things to ourselves, and the deeper meanings behind that, and how just with a simple change of thought in your model can literally open up thousands of possibilities for you. And so that's been my go-to as of recently, because I just, especially being in making a retreat and going to be interacting more on a personal level, is really understanding language and how people are interacting, and just how simple statements really unpack so much, because it's just the way that someone sees the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's where like NLP comes from, and a lot of like really interesting thoughts and practices and stuff like that. A lot of Robert Anton Wilson stuff is kind of based on Bandler's work too. And I don't know if y'all have been listening to me. I love Robert Anton Wilson. But yeah, and I typed it in the chat too. But for anybody who's listening or watching the replay, I'm reading Rick Rubin's book right now, and it is phenomenally good. And it's easy and fun to read. The Creative Act, A Way of Being, Ruben Rick. Thank you, Ham Cow. You're the best. It's just got a big bullseye on it. But the chapters are really short, and he's talking about just a lot. One of the biggest takeaways to me so far, and it was very early on in the book, was he was talking about how a lot of artists struggle with depression, addiction, etc. Right, like a lot of deep, painful stuff. And he said, but what makes a great artist so good at what they do is their sensitivity. And so that sensitivity is what gives them the proclivity to be able to notice things that other people don't notice. And then that's what, they're pointing out with their art. And so, it's kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest, because my heart goes out because I struggle with it myself. Like I'm a creative person too, and I have a lot of those tendencies, sensitivities, and I'm very moody. I can be very moody. So it just is what it is. I try to roll with the punches and not get and try to stay as neutral as possible, right? Like keeping that idea of the slide in mind. But from time to time, and just like he says in Transurfing, like you can't force yourself to feel a different way. Like good luck with that. Like you're just using more energy to try and do that. But it was good to hear that because, and one of the things that he said too is like, think about whatever the opposite is of whatever it is that you're trying to do. For instance, for me, and I've been thinking about this all day long. It's like, what is the opposite of funny? What's not funny? And as I sit down to try to write things that are not funny, they're fucking hilarious. Those are the funniest things, that you're not supposed to talk about. You can't help but laugh and joke about. So a lot of great perspective in that book. And I need to dig into Bandler's stuff, man. Like it's just so heady. But it makes a lot of sense. Like, and there, I've heard other teachers talk about these ideas too, where like some tribes, they don't have like past and present or past and future vernacular, right? Like, so like the waves it's not a wave that waved or whatever. It's the ocean is waving, right? Like, so they live so much more presently in the moment because of their language, because of the model that they have, because of that's what's been, put into their mind, which is a tabula rasa to experience the world that way. Now their heart, on the other hand, is connected to all the infinite. So it's, doing its kinky, weird freak thing, and so these two things are kind of like coming together. But, don't worry, buddy. I'm not going to cry. Not on this call.
With the structure of magic, it is the precursor to NLP, but that's not what Bandler was working towards. He was literally the structure of magic is him and his writing partner, realizing that this group of therapists literally had powers that normal therapists didn't, and it all boiled down to their language and ability to connect with people and their models of reality. And so the whole beginning part of that book is really him taking the findings and work of other people and compiling all of his observations from watching these therapists, and then building a system of how they were working on what they were doing and like getting to the deeper meaning of people's words. And so basically his whole thing was, when you're dealing with someone that doesn't understand something, it seems like magic. And so people would watch these therapists do this work, and it would just seem like they waved their hand and cast a spell, and next thing you know, people were healed. And their work was like, hey, yeah, that's what it looks like, that's what it feels like and seems like, but here's the process. Here's what they are noticing. And a lot of these therapists weren't conscious about their methods. They just had an intuitive skill. And so that's what him and his partner really did, was break down after watching all these examples and interactions, and really kind of created this system in the structure of magic, just to kind of like, hey, like there's this other possibility in psychotherapy. And so the book ain't really about magic as much as about understanding perceptions and how those perceptions that you have are creating these models. And when you talk, you're not really talking of the thing, you're talking of the model. And you have to live to not live in the model. You have to to act, to be in this space doing things. And the more we talk, and the more it's just a symptom of being stuck in the mind and not here and now. And it's important for us to have these conversations so we can all learn from each other and gather better perspectives and stuff. So I don't want to take away language, but really words only make up 7% of communication too. So we really hold a lot of dear, and this is the thing with texting these days, is we've now been moved into this new form of communication, and we're all texting all the time, and now we're adding way more value to the words, and not from the eye contact and body language and intonation and all these things that actually make up communication and like help you understand and help you communicate and help you connect. And so, that's all gets really, even when I have a healed conversation between myself and someone else's healed, someone still gets lost in just that text, right? And we still have to clarify. We still have to actually have a phone call. We still have to do these things. And so this world of social media and this world of telephone, texting, and email has really just pushed us into giving more value to the words and the vibratory nature of the feelings those words represent. And that's really a lot of where I'm trying to bring my work to, is helping people understand the vibratory feeling versus the intellectualized model of it.
That's awesome. Oh, James asked, what's the vibration of oxytocin? That's the love hormone, right?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I don't, there's probably spectral analysis available for that, and I'll ask ChatGPT sometime this week. Like, that's ultimately, that's it. It's I wonder if oxytocin has anything to do with dopamine too, right?
I'm sure. Yeah, it's got to jack your dopamine. Yeah. It's got a lot to do with doing stupid shit too.
Make some bad decisions with that oxytocin.
That's right.
I want to marry you. I want to be with you the rest of my life, even though we haven't had any real conversations about partnership and what that looks like.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, to get deeper to the matter, I am working on these things with my mentors and really building a retreat model, vibrational alchemy, a retreat within. And the first one we're shooting for is March 8th, with the Friday through the 10th, and Orlando, Florida.
Cool.
So, yeah, anybody that's interested in learning more about that can find me on the Sonic Portal Instagram, or the more professional version of that is James Thomas, Retreat Leader, and for where the Mantrayana was.
I've got both of those links in the caption or the description of the video. And so definitely follow James on Instagram on both those accounts if you don't already. Or just shoot me a message, right? Like if you're hearing this and you're like, I want to learn more, just shoot me a message and I can put you guys in touch. It's no problem. I'm happy to do it. But yeah, I think we'll kind of leave it there for now. I'm excited about what you're putting together. It's awesome. I love this conversation, like kind of weaved and wobbled into some cool stuff. And I appreciate everybody for coming to hang out. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Y'all are amazing. Thanks for hanging out live. I'm going to be doing some episodes with Abby Johnson on the transurfing stuff, which has probably been a long time coming. She and I are both super nerds about it. And so she was like receptive to the idea of doing some episodes about it. So we're going to do some of that. So we'll kick that off next week. And then in the meantime, definitely follow James. He'll be back on too. He can hold court on some transurfing stuff, just like anybody else that has been reading that stuff.
I've been rereading transurfing, and I just got done rereading chapter. I think it's chapter 5, balance.
Yep,
it's either 4 or 5.
I think 4 is balance. Yeah, 5 is the English transition. Yeah, 4 is balance.
And I tell you that chapter kicked my ass, because there's so many subtleties in that chapter, and you think you have transurfing down, right? But then you read that chapter and you're like, oh, I was overlooking this. Oh, I was overlooking that. And there's a lot to that chapter. And like as I've reread it, I'm like, wow, still got a long way to go to like fully assimilating all of these concepts and to a working model of continual participation in my experience.
I mean, me too. It was just the other day when it just had been so long because I didn't read it all year last year, and then I read at the beginning of the year before, and it's like I caught myself just like, bitching about some dumb thing, maybe somebody in traffic, or I don't even know what it was, and then something else happened, and I was like, what the hell am I doing, man? Like, I know what this is. This is here to knock me off balance, and like,
Yes.
even just the other day, I was like, something happened. And then I was like, oh yeah, because that's supposed to happen, because something's supposed to knock you off balance. So just, fly back from the window pane, relax, take a deep breath, and see what other possibility there is. You don't have to make a choice right now. Sometimes I just get into that mind state, but it's like, well, you know what? I know what this is. Like, I just had been missing it for months and forgot and like got into this habit. It's like as soon as you make a decision or as soon as you take an action, there will be some cosmic force that tries to knock you off of balance. But there's also a mighty force behind that is like at your aid as well.
Yeah.
So
and that's where the guardian comes into. The inner guardian really plays a major factor in like keeping all these things together. And so, if you lose track of that inner guardian aspect of transurfing, it's easy to really get off track, and so it takes a lot. It's like it isn't just something you can read once and be like, I have this, bro.
Right.
Yeah,
No. I read it
like,
dozens of times, and still, it's like I have to keep it fresh in my memory. I just have to, it's why I wanted to make it easy for folks and just put it all into a summary, like here, it's not 30 hours, it's 3. And I don't touch on everything because there's so much nuanced stuff in there, but it's like I tried to keep the vernacular the same, and not put too many crazy concepts in there. It's like, here's what you need to remember, and then don't worry about the other stuff, but then read the book too and like learn about the nuance and the other stuff. I mean, we did the reading clubs, and I mean, I've just read it so many times, but I still haven't internalized it all, even though I think, like you said, I think you were the one who said, I went into the future and wrote this book to my past self or something like that.
No, I felt like it felt like I had a part of me had written it to leave for myself, like, and not, like I had already lived his life in another life, and like, hey, it was like as I read it, I was just like, I felt like I wrote it, like it was crazy. It was like, it connected me so deeply to a very mechanical view of all the spiritual stuff that's already out there, like the computer elements and the and just the labeling was all just really concise. It really was a lot of good handles to pull to like give visualizations and to like be able to tie into things. And again, when I read it for the first time, I wasn't very spiritual. I was very more sciencey and scientism, stuck on the orthodox. Hey, this is the world, provisional self-esteem. We're right. You need to learn this. And then I got kind of opened up, and when I got opened up, it felt even more. I was like, oh man, this guy's really got a good system to pull from this energy that we're all pulling from all the time. And give it different names, give it different labels. It does not matter. It's the essence of the systematic approach to being able to be aware in the moment of how you're creating your reality.
100%.
He doesn't have to be right. You can just create your own system and do the same thing.
Yeah, he doesn't even claim that it's his anyway. It's ancient, and it's just as old as it could be, right? So yeah, 100%. And all this hullabaloo around it, but like. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great to chat, and thanks everybody again in the chat. And yeah, keep hanging around. Honey says the vibration of oxytocin 528 hertz. So
is it really?
Possibly. I don't know.
That sounds like speculation, but it would be really cool if it actually is, because man, I wasn't sold on 528 for a minute, and I saw a documentary on it recently, and it made me really like reevaluate. And so now I'm ready to dive back into that material, and if that's a fact, that's really neat and needs to be exploited for positive benefits.
100%.
I mean, exploitation in the most positive way.
yeah, for sure. Well, awesome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Dude, always, dude. You're always welcome. And yeah, we'll see everybody very, very soon. Much love, everybody. Peace. Thanks for hanging. We'll chat soon.